Hi, my name is Brito, and I am the director of Greenspace. I'm here to speak to you today about urban green space and cultural land practice of reclamation, which allows us to envision new social transformation within our world. Greenspace is a 25-year-old nonprofit urban farm and garden supply in the dense urban core of Philadelphia, and it is a place of reclamation. At the turn of the century, it was a factory, a steel galvanizing plant, and it was alive with relationships and jobs and community. And as global relationships changed, so did many local relationships in cities and places like the factory that sat here on this site went elsewhere. And when it did, it left many large open parcels where landscapes began to come back. In the early 2000s, I was a young architecture student in North Philadelphia, and I was riding my bike daily past large open parcels like the one you see here, which is very much what Greenspace looked like for much of the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And I was thinking a lot about the intersection between the built environment and the natural world, and watching sort of the natural systems start to reclaim the cultural manifestation of our built environment, and wondering what it really means to fit the farming to the farm in an urban context. I could understand what it is to be a vegetable in the forest, or what it is to sculpt yourself to stick to the hill, but what really is it to farm like an urban ecosystem, one that has lost contour and context in its sort of mapping and cardinal relationships. And the way that designers and urbanists have begun to approach the creation in urban settings is largely through placemaking and filling the void with a sort of aesthetic sense of relationships, and even recurating aesthetic sense of relationships from blight to something we call adaptive reuse, which is just reorganizing elements to highlight the beauty of certain aspects of the built environment. But all of this meaning is really given by what we can see and what we already know. And landscapes aren't really voids. They're actually huge amounts of relational information and digestive systems that we may or may not know a lot about. And so we might not be able to say deeply into what they are or what they're manifesting. But we are part of those relationships and those ecosystems, and we have been for millennia. Agriculture is really the basis of all of our culture and all of our shared practice, and it's a relationship between ourselves and the land. And in the urban context, we might manifest the relationship between ourselves and our land through the types of resources and materials we have. It might look like container gardens and bricks. It might look like small-scale digestive systems and worm castings, or using your garden clippings as mulch, or companion planting to really reduce the square footage of your footprint while growing as much as you possibly can. We bring our identity, we derive that in our sensory experience in the landscape. So there are smells and tastes, textures and sounds that bring us so quickly back to our youth and back to our deep core of self, due to our relational experience and our memories in landscapes. And so we can't help but bring ourselves to the land in a land practice. And from there, we kind of can't help to bring ourselves together in the land as a shared practice. And it becomes a space where we can really sort of test and envision the potential for shared value and shared leadership in community space because of the malleability of Greenspace. So as I said at the beginning of this talk, Greensgrow is a place of reclamation. It really was in a state of toxicity, and really went through a manifestation of almost aesthetics to become a green space again. And it went from being a space to really a place because of the shared collective action and cultural transformation that began to happen here and began to happen throughout the city with programs like the land care initiatives from PHS and City Harvest Gardeners Alliance that allowed more food to be harvested in the urban context, in our dense built environment across the city. And now there's 412 farms across the city. Greensgrow, in turn, continued to become a deeper source of network and resource for farms and green spaces as we bring in resources and materials like soil, bees, beneficial insects, and grow plants and food. Together in the land, we're able to rethink patterns more quickly because patterns are changing cyclically through our seasons and annually. And so just like the cells in our body, we're taking up information more quickly between each other in the natural environment, and we have shed more of our social container and cultural container that relates to an economic system, and we begin to relate to our land again, which allows us to form new cultural relationship, which may happen through playful inspiration. We can redefine story here in the landscape, and many people have become part of Greensgrow's story over the years. And when we do this, we really reclaim our potential to define the tapestry that we are in both shared resources and shared culture. As we reclaim our land, we transform it into what we want our future to be. Thank you.